Welcome back. In just 6 weeks, Donald Trump will be sentenced for his historic felony conviction on 34 counts of falsifying business records. There's a broad spectrum of possible outcomes here, and the former president claims he is prepared for the harshest of all, prison time.
I'm okay with it. I saw one of my lawyers the other day on television saying, "Oh no, you don't want to do that to the president." I said, "You don't beg for anything. You just the way it is." I'm not sure the public would stand for it. With a,
if you tried house arrest or
I think it would be tough for the public to take. You know, at a certain point, there's a breaking point.
Before that phase of this unprecedented case arrives in July, Trump and his GOP allies are saying the appeals process should leapfrog to the Supreme Court. And joining us now, NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns, New York trial and appellate lawyer Mark Zauderer, and New York Law School professor Anna Kaminsky. So, Dasha, sentencing in July, just a few days before the RNC. Yeah. What kind of legal activity can we expect between now and then? And what else are we hearing from Donald Trump in the wake of this verdict?
Well, yeah, of course, you heard he did on Truth Social ask for the Supreme Court to step in. He is criticizing, once again, D.A. Bragg and Judge Merchan. And the timeline between now and then, we are likely to see some activity on the part of the prosecution. D.A. Bragg neglected to say what they would pursue, but he said that the prosecution will speak through some court filings in the coming weeks. So that's what we're going to be watching for. And, of course, the former president likely continuing to lash out between now and then.
And we heard a clip there where he suggests there could be a breaking point for the public. Mark, if he's in prison, could that be interpreted as a threat?
I think that's a dangerous statement, and it's been correctly perceived as that. You know, the thought that the Supreme Court is going to step in here, it's really a Hail Mary for him. And if it happens at all, his grandchildren are going to be grown by that time. I mean, this is going to work its way through the court system. And the strongest card he has to play right now is delay. Because even if the sentencing actually takes place on the first scheduled date, July 11th, that's just the beginning of the clock running from when he has 30 days to appeal, several months before he has to perfect, that is, submit his briefs in support of his appeal. They're going to be answering briefs. The court would have an argument and a decision. That's going to be after the election. So he has the benefit of time right now, and that's working in his favor.
What do you see, Anna, as the factors the judge might consider when it comes to sentencing?
Well, so the judge is going to consider sort of two categories. The first is the offense, the nature of the offense, the facts that the judge himself witnessed right during the trial. And then the second is who the defendant is. And that's a big bucket, right? So everything about Trump, the court is going to be able to consider. That's things as simple as his prior criminal history, which we know there is none, but all sorts of other things like his support, the fact that he was the president, the fact that he is running for president again. All of those things the court's going to be able to consider. And of course, in addition to that, it's all of Trump's conduct that is including this period of time now.
And Mark, you have a lot of experience when it comes to this appeals court. You say that there aren't the typical red flags for reversal in this particular case. So as you look at it, explain what you see and why you feel Trump doesn't have a strong case for appeal.
Sure. Nobody wants to be a criminal defendant, but if you are going to be a defendant, New York is the place to be. It's probably the fairest jurisdiction in the country. He received a scrupulously fair trial from the moment of jury selection, as Danny Savalas said, which allowed his lawyers to very thoroughly vet the people who were going to be serving on the jury, right through the trial, which was conservatively conducted, right up to the time of the verdict. The judge took a conservative course. He allowed every opportunity for the defense to make legitimate objections. He read straight and narrow the accepted jury charges, and he didn't stray from it. He didn't engage in some of the activities that can put a conviction at jeopardy, such as trying to explain what a jury charge means, what something like causing means. He stuck to the straight and narrow. So I think, at least in the New York courts, which is the appeal is going to work its way up, it's a long haul and a stretch to think that this is going to get overturned.
We're continuing to hear more and more reaction coming from the verdict. Stormy Daniels now has given her first public comment since the verdict. Let's listen.
It's like when you have a child and sometimes taking the electronics away work, but if your child is very artistic, they don't care. They'll just go color in their coloring books. You have to find the punishment that not just matches the crime and is fair and just, but that impacts that particular person.
So based on what we know about Trump, Dasha, what kind of penalty could make a difference here? And what's he saying about the potential of a jail sentence or house arrest and so forth?
Well, here's the thing, Anna. There's the legal piece of it, right, which you are also articulate at going through. And then there's the politics. And the thing about Trump and his team is they've gotten so good at spinning any sort of legal jeopardy into a benefit politically. I mean, you saw him have to, pay hundreds of millions of dollars in these other civil cases, and that turned into a rallying cry for his base. It's a very slim chance, according to the lawyers I've been speaking with, if something like jail or even house arrest were to happen. I mean, you better bet that would rile up his base in potentially an unprecedented way. So that's the tough line to walk with the former president is, even if it's legally and practically punitive and painful, politically, it gives him that jolt with a lot of the voters that support him. I mean,
what does he care more about?
Right, no,
like
exactly.
his personal comfort or the political boost he could get?
Right now, it's a court of public opinion because we've got an election coming up. So that's the focus for him. And he's saying in this interview, hey, I'm okay with it, whatever they choose, jail or house arrest. But, and you heard him there say, but the public wouldn't stand for it. And at a certain point, there is a breaking point. And we've heard him use that kind of rhetoric before, and people do listen. And to your point, that's why it can be so dangerous.
Is deterrence, Anna, a factor here when we talk about the sentence for Donald Trump? And would the judge be thinking about that? Like, okay, if I fine him, I mean, he may be, having to pay something that was along the lines of what he paid in the hush money, $130,000. Is that really going to change behavior?
Right. So I think, the judge is supposed to be punishing for the crime that occurred and not, although deterrence, yes, both specifically for the defendant and generally for the public is part of this. We're dealing with such a unique individual that by that I mean a unique defendant, that when we say deterrence, you really have to think about people who are in the same situation that are going to be deterred from doing the same conduct. And so given a finding of guilt and what will eventually be a conviction, which will be the sentence and the finding of guilt put together, that in and of itself would be deterrence for most people who would be in this position of falsifying business records, right? So it's really hard to make a comparison between Trump, who is just so unique, that's what we've been talking about all along, and then any other potential individual who'd be thinking about this type of criminality.
I think there are two other things that are important to add to that excellent point. One of the major factors that a judge will consider is acceptance of responsibility. And it's likely that Mr. Trump will get a 0 in that category. So that's going to certainly count against him. The other thing, and this kind of falls over into the political area, whatever sentence he gets, let's say it's home confinement, I'm just speculating on that, it's likely he will get a stay. In other words, it would not be imposed until the time for the appeal runs. And that's going to be well after
years, right?
That's going to be years.